We are joined now by Karen Moreau, Executive Director of the New York State Petroleum Council, also a spokesperson for the American Petroleum Institute. And you have a new film out. It has to do with the controversial issue of fracking. Karen, thanks for joining us here on Mornings on the Mall here at CPAC.
Great to be here.
Listen, I got to say to you, when I hear all this talk about fracking, and people say, well, this is controversial, this is new, we shouldn't be doing it. I grew up in the oil fields of West Texas. As a child, I remember hearing people talk about fracking. They called it a fracturing process at the time. This is not a new technology.
Exactly. It's been around since 1949 in this country. Almost 2 million wells, oil and gas wells in the United States, have been developed using hydraulic fracturing or fracking. Nothing new here.
Well, then why is it so controversial all of a sudden?
I think it's controversial because the people opposed to fossil fuels identified the term fracking as something negative. And when they figured out they could make money, raising money among their followers in places like New York, where I'm from, they realized that they were onto something here.
Can you just explain briefly what fracking is and how it works?
Well, fracking, hydraulic fracturing, is a process where after a well is drilled and constructed using 3 layers of steel and cement, so they build the well first, and these wells are typically about a mile or more deep vertically, and now because of horizontal drilling technologies, they go about a mile horizontally. So you're talking about a well bore that's over almost 2 miles. And in order to reach the resource, these deep, hard shale formations, and to open them up so that the gas or the oil flows into the pipe.
Can seep into the pipe.
Yes. They have to fracture that shale. Now, this fracturing takes place, as I said, well over a mile below the ground, well below any water table or water resource. So after the well's built, they come in with a fracking crew, and it's like a wonderful truck stop of all kinds of specialty trucks. Trucks that bring in water, sand, a blender, and they add several chemical additives. Typically, most companies use 3, and the reason they do this is they need to reduce the friction going down that far.
And so they then fracture that shale, and then the oil can seep into the pipe, and you can recover it.
Exactly. So they push all this solution down, and it breaks open the shale, and that allows the oil and gas to flow up.
Karen Moreau is our guest, and she's got a brand new film. It's called Empire State Divide, and it's a documentary, and it's premiering today right here at CPAC, right? Is that?
It's going to be shown at 11 a.m. here at CPAC.
And I love the angle that you're taking on this, because your whole point in this film, and of course you can tell us even better, but forgive me if I'm wrong, you're saying that all of those people who are against fracking, the people who are wrapping themselves around in the wonderful blanket of I love humans and I love the earth and I'm the only one trying to save our planet, they're actually the ones who are harming people because of their stance. Explain that.
Right, they're harming people. I made this film prior to joining the American Petroleum Institute, and I made it because I had spent a lot of time traveling through Pennsylvania and southern New York. I come from a farming background, know a lot of the poor farmers in the southern part of New York. What I saw in Pennsylvania was a complete renaissance due to natural gas drilling in the Marcellus Shale. And I thought, my God, this would be such a renaissance for upstate New York and these failing farms. Unfortunately, what we have in New York is we have the power center in New York City, which really controls the issue. And so the New York State government, and now under Andrew Cuomo, 3rd year of his administration, we have a moratorium on fracking. These poor rural people cannot develop their resource. They cannot make money. They have wealth in the ground they cannot touch.
They're taking money away from the poor. They're
exactly.
taking it and not giving them any alternatives.
Right. It's rural poverty.
Yeah.
It's rural poverty.
I got to warn you, and Karen Moreau, this is hitting home here because the same thing is happening in Virginia and Maryland now.
Right.
And we wanted to talk about that local issue. But first, I need to warn you, and we probably should have done this before she came on, in fact, because this could get ugly. A spokesperson for your group, American Petroleum Institute, was right here with us at CPAC last year.
1 year ago.
And did an interview similar to this in the morning. And later that day, Nancy Pelosi, minority leader, said this at her press conference.
Interview by somebody, well, I didn't awaken to it, but it was on this morning when station. I don't know how it got onto my radio, but nonetheless, it would interview. I don't know. It must have been during the night I did something with the dial.
Yeah, well, she went on to slam your group, but the point is Nancy Pelosi is listening right now, so you might
What
be...
is your message to Nancy?
Well, my message to Nancy is that our industry is going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs, in particular for women and minorities, in the next 10 years. We are the leading creator of jobs in this country, and I think Nancy needs to embrace that idea.
Now, there is oil and gas underneath Maryland. There is oil and gas to be gotten underneath parts of Virginia.
Right.
And yet nobody's going after it because both states are sort of blocking it, aren't they?
Well, it's being studied, and sometimes the word studied, is another word for delay.
Back burner.
Right. So, again, you have the George Washington National Forest where there's the resource. You have coastal plains of Virginia where the resource exists. The reason we can get to it today and why it's economical is the improvements in the technologies in horizontal drilling. It's not the fracking piece. That's not new.
Can I talk to you specifically about water, though? And we've only got a minute, but a lot of people are against the idea of doing this in Virginia, Maryland, because they don't want there to be some sort of spillage or leakage into the Potomac. One of the areas is very close to the head of the Potomac. You see these, videos where they light their water on fire. Oh, there's gas in our water. Well, what's the reality there?
The reality is that film, Gasland, is a propaganda piece funded by anti-fossil fuel people. Secondly, that surface methane has nothing to do with fracking. It exists all over rural America.
Has there ever been a situation where fracking has caused any dangerous element to get into water?
This has been attested to by Lisa Jackson, now Gina McCarthy, all the Obama people who aren't exactly friendly to our industry have testified there's never been a single case of groundwater contamination from fracking.
And the fact of the matter is, where they have done fracking, we have seen the economies soar.
Huge. It's the greatest thing for employment right now. It really is.
Exactly.
All right, Karen Moreau, I just want to get this clear. Nancy, it's Karen Moreau. She's the executive director of the New York State Petroleum Council. Her film is Empire State Divide. Come on down and see it, Nancy. And by the way, Nancy, you're listening to WMAL.
It's where Washington comes to talk.
640.